Okay, this is going to be my top 10 darkest moments in pro wrestling history. At number 10, I'm actually going to go with the Ultimate Warrior holding up Vince McMahon for money at SummerSlam 1991. Basically, if you don't know the story, Ultimate Warrior went up to Vince and said, "Hey, listen, you owe me this, this, and this from WrestleMania 7, the bonus, and I didn't get paid this. So if you don't give me this amount of money, I'm not going out there." I believe it was like $700,000 or $500,000, whatever it was. After the SummerSlam match, Vince actually fired the Ultimate Warrior, and while the Ultimate Warrior was hot as hell, probably as hot as anyone in WWF history at the time, you just didn't see him until WrestleMania. So you went, 6-7 months without seeing the hottest guy in the business. Ultimate Warrior was someone that a lot of kids looked up to, and I just think him not being around created a huge gap, a huge hole in the company. But also, I just think for kids, the Warrior was someone you could believe in, and then all of a sudden you just don't see him. At the time, you're too young, and there's no internet dirt sheets or anything to keep up with as far as news goes. So you had no idea what the hell happened. Everyone started making rumors and jokes, how the Ultimate Warrior died of AIDS, or, he went on a vacation and he never came back, and, he became a chiropractor. I mean, there was so much stuff going on, with rumors, about the Warrior, but he lost a lot of momentum. He lost a lot of juice. I think when he came back at WrestleMania 8, something seemed a little bit weird. Something seemed a little bit off. So I would say that whole thing, obviously at the time, nobody knew what went on behind the scenes. But looking back on it, I would say that was definitely a dark moment because, the Warrior just lost a lot of buzz and a lot of juice. Number 9, I'm going to go with Dave Batista winning the Royal Rumble, which led to CM Punk walking out of the company. I don't think this was the reason why CM Punk left. I just think it was I think Punk used it as an excuse to leave. I think whenever you make a decision like quitting a team or leaving a company, it's not just one decision or not just one thing is going to make you leave. It's kind of a plethora of a bunch of different things. I just think Batista winning that Rumble was just, it was just a bad decision, kind of a bad message to the locker room about, I really thought it made the locker room feel like hard work. It's just not, your hard work is just not paying off. I think it kind of sent that message. And I just think it's one of the reasons why Punk did leave. I think he definitely used it as an excuse to leave. I think he felt like, the timing was just right to go. And this was just one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. Possibly the worst booking decision in WWE history. It just made no sense to me. There wasn't any energy or any buzz to Batista's return. Anyone that ever remembers Batista and Randy Orton facing each other in the ring when they were in their prime, their matches were nothing special. So what makes you think that 5 years later, while Batista's getting closer to age 50, that these matches were something that somebody wanted to see? I just don't get the motivation behind that Rumble win. I know a lot of people have bitched and complained about it, and some people might even think it was topped the next year with Roman Reigns winning the Rumble. But yeah, I mean, I know what happened after that with Daniel Bryan. A lot of people look fondly about that time because it started the whole Daniel Bryan push kind of to that next level. But at that time, I just thought this was just one of the most bogus moments I've ever seen. So that was Batista winning the Royal Rumble of 2014, to be exact. At number 8, I'm going to go with Kurt Angle. I still don't even know if he was exactly fired by the WWE or fired by Vince. I'm just going to say it was a mutual parting of ways. The way I remember it, this is the way Angle explained it, so I'm just going to take him for his word. They basically parted ways, and Vince said, 6 months later, we'll get you a new contract. That's how I remembered it. But, Angle never came back. To me, I really think Vince wanted to go in a different direction. I really think he wanted to, changed the demographic a little bit. You know, I think they wanted to get the kids more involved, the families more involved. You saw Rey Mysterio and John Cena win the championships at WrestleMania. I think Vince kind of was, just felt like guys like Angle and Benoit were better off on different shows or different programs away from the main event scene. And I think Angle was frustrated by that. And at the same time, I don't think he really saw Angle as someone that was going to sell merchandise. I think he was looking at Angle like he was only catering to the hardcore demographic. And it was kind of hurting the big shows, because when you get to the pay-per-views, Survivor Series or WrestleMania, you saw Angle cheered over guys like Cena and Mysterio. So I think having Angle out of the equation was going to force the fans to get behind the guys that Vince wanted to push. So I think that's one way to look at it. The other thing is, Eddie Guerrero had just died the year earlier, and they were cracking down on drugs, painkillers, steroid testing, wellness policy. All those things went into effect, and I think it affected Kurt Angle more than anybody. And Angle was beat up as well. So, I think it was a blessing in disguise for Kurt to a degree. I think it was bad for his career, his legacy for the WWE, but at the same time, it was great to see him go to the TNA. I even wrote an email to his agent. I told his agent, it'd be great if Kurt could go to the TNA, because they have so much talent there, to see him work with, AJ and Joe and all those guys. I thought that'd be great. And it was great for Angle to get off the road. I really think if Angle had stayed in the WWE that year, I think something would have happened negatively. I don't think anything to the degree of what happened with Benoit would have happened, but I do think having Angle keep wrestling full time in the WWE and continuing down that path, I just think something bad would have happened. I don't think he would have killed his wife or anything like that, but I definitely think he probably would have gotten hurt in some form or fashion. At number 7, I'm going to go with Daniel Bryan losing the world title match at WrestleMania 28, to be exact. I think he lost in like 18 seconds to Sheamus. I think that was the exact time. You guys know how I feel about this moment. I just thought WrestleMania 28 could have been definitely a top 5 WrestleMania of all time if Sheamus and Bryan were allowed to go out there and wrestle. I just felt like that crowd was so hot. I just thought that would have been such an awesome opener if they got about 15 to 18 minutes or whatever it was. I mean, I just thought that would have been incredible. That was something I was really looking forward to, too. I mean, and by the time you get to WrestleMania, you don't really want to think about, building towards next year's WrestleMania. And I know some people would argue that, it helped Bryan to a degree because it got the fans behind him. But to me, I always look forward to WrestleMania, and by the time you get to WrestleMania, you just want the show to deliver. You don't want to think about building up, this guy or building up that guy. But yeah, man, I just, 2 years in a row to have Bryan cut from WrestleMania 27 and then to have him squashed at WrestleMania 28. Both of those moments were really, really tough to take. So at number 6, I'm going to go with Eric Bischoff awarding Triple H the world title in September 2002. Basically, this is what happened. Brock Lesnar was the undisputed champion. There was a number 1 contenders match on Raw between Undertaker and Triple H. Triple H ended up winning because Brock interfered and cost Taker the match. By the time you get to SmackDown of that week, Brock Lesnar became exclusive property of the SmackDown as undisputed champion. So Raw had no champion. So because Triple H was declared the number 1 contender, Bischoff just came out and awarded him the world title. This is no blame to Eric Bischoff. I know this wasn't his decision or his idea. But to me, I just think it sent a bad message. It just became the Triple H show. And don't get me wrong, I think Triple H was still a great heel in 2002 and 2003. I know the reign sucked because of the opponents. Triple H was actually trying to be hated. He was, being boring and repetitive on purpose to get heat because, as we all know, Triple H doesn't like getting cheered as a heel. So he basically changed the whole thing. But to me, it was really This was all about, Triple H kind of just hogging the spotlight. I just remember that reign, just feeling like guys like Van Dam and Booker T. After a while, you just knew they had no chance of winning or no chance of getting elevated to that spot because, you had the whole Evolution bullshit coming in. And then you had Evolution was a great stable. I don't want to call it bullshit, but then you had all these guys from WCW that were, kind of going to be fed to Triple H. So I just feel like awarding him the world title there, it kind of planted the seeds for a lot of frustrations in that title scene right there on Raw, but which could have been such an amazing year. But that's the problem right there. You had Triple H promise this really long world title reign, and they were going to stick to their guns, and Triple H was gonna get this reign no matter what, no matter who was hot on that undercard, whether it be Rob Van Dam, Booker T, or maybe even a heel Jericho, probably deserved the title as well at that time. Number 5, I'm gonna go with the death of Eddie Guerrero. I remember this I think it was Sunday, November 13th, 2005. This death probably affected me more than anything since Tupac died. When Tupac Shakur died in 1996, it affected me a lot because I felt like he was a father figure because, his albums, Me Against the World and All Eyes on Me at that time, I felt like he was giving me advice. I felt like I knew the person. And the same thing with Eddie, too. When Eddie passed away, it just felt like a family member that you just wasn't around anymore because Eddie just had that personal feud with Rey Mysterio. Then he was, kind of in this love-hate relationship with Batista. 1 minute he was angry, 1 minute he was funny, 1 minute he was doing this. So he had these multiple personalities, and you just felt so connected to Eddie. And when Eddie just died of a heart failure after brushing his teeth that morning, it sent shockwaves to everybody. I just remember crying a lot at school that year. I cried the day it happened. I cried in class a couple times. I don't think anyone saw me crying in class, but I remember the one that really got to me was the tribute show with Rey. I really thought Rey Mysterio's speech, it really hit my heart very hard. I started losing it when Rey, started breaking down in tears. But, that was just such an emotional tribute show. I remember even Benoit, that speech was tough to watch too, because you could see the metamorphosis of Benoit in that speech when he started breaking down. It was just so hard to watch, but at the same time just so emotional. It just seemed like they sucked part of Benoit's soul out. Benoit, part of Benoit's soul was sucked out of him when Eddie passed. It really felt like that. And Ray's speech as well. You could just feel the pain and the hurt of, your best friend or one of your best friends just not being there anymore. So Eddie's death for me it was really tough to take. Probably even more so than Benoit's, if we're just talking about the individual. Number 4, I'm going to go with Stone Cold walking out of the WWE in June of 2002. The exact date was June 10th, 2002, because he didn't want to do the job to Brock Lesnar because he felt like Austin versus Lesnar was a SummerSlam, WrestleMania main event worthy match. One of the finals, that wasn't the main reason why Austin walked out. He was unhappy with WrestleMania. It's coming out now that he was unhappy with the way the invasion angle was handled. Didn't really care much about it at the time. So Austin had been unhappy for years, but to me, this is why it was such a dark moment. And I know people look back on this like it wasn't that big of a deal. And, if you look back at by the time you get to SummerSlam 2002, it's like you forget Austin was even part of the company. The company it just shows you how the WWE just keeps moving and moving. And, they don't, no matter who leaves, they're just going to keep moving and building towards that next pay-per-view. And you're just going to forget what happened. But you got to remember, when you get to June of 2002, I remember being in high school at the time. And I just remember everyone just talking about it and, what the fuck happened? This is when people started going on Pro Wrestling Scoops or the dirt sheets to find out exactly what happened. And, naturally you would think it'd be a work, but there is so much real news coming out about that. This is a reality that Austin's not going to show up. And when Austin wasn't there on June 10th, 2002, Flair came out and just said Stone Cold didn't show up tonight. I remember Eddie came out to Austin's music, and it was just like when you heard the music, you're like, oh, Austin's here. But when Eddie said that's the last time you're going to hear that music, it started to sink in. You know, Austin's not coming back. But to me, it was really a dark moment because when you kept up with the product that year, you had Raw and SmackDown. You know, you were seeing Austin twice a week. You were seeing him on the pay-per-views. Everything revolved around Austin that year still, even though he wasn't quite in his prime anymore. So and I remember when Austin took off 2 weeks after Unforgiven, 2 weeks after WrestleMania, there was just a huge gap in the roster and just, you know, realizing that Austin just wasn't coming back. It was, to me, it was just tough to take, you know, because you were missing someone that was the biggest part of the show, and you didn't know how they were going to adjust and rebuild from there. But looking back at the Summer Slam 2002, they just had so much talent that they were pretty much fine. Number 3, I'm going to go with Gabe Sapolsky's getting fired from Ring of Honor. So yeah, this is the only non-WWE moment on the list. But to me, it was a huge moment for Ring of Honor. I've talked about this plenty of times. If you guys don't know, Gabe Sapolsky used to be Paul Heyman's personal assistant in ECW. And when ECW went bankrupt, Gabe was one of the creative members about putting Ring of Honor back together, or Ring of Honor together, to get some distribution with video sales with RF Video, the former distributor to ECW. So you know, Gabe, to me, he just kind of represented what a wrestling fan wanted to see. He basically booked Ring of Honor like he was a wrestling fan. He just gave you match after match, you know, the type of matches that you would pay to see, and you know, he just delivered such quality for so long. And, you know, I was really happy with the Ring of Honor product, when Gabe was fired. So, yeah, I mean, to me, the company was still good. I would even say that Ring of Honor was great for another couple years after Gabe, left. But at the same time, you guys know, I just really love his style of booking. He kind of blended the ECW style and the, and just really knew what to give you in the ring. You know, you got the ECW style promos from Gabe, and at the same time he was able to, you know, kind of take it to that next level in the ring with what he was booking. And yeah, so to me, Ring of Honor was never quite the same after Gabe left. I'm not saying that Gabe didn't have his flaws, but for me, I just remember being addicted to Ring of Honor when Gabe was booking in the Ring of Honor heyday, and it was never quite the same. To me, it's kind of like you know, Dr. Dre leaving Death Row. You know, Death Row. You know, the Death Row Records was missing a huge piece to that puzzle after he left, and you saw what happened to Death Row. They just kind of collapsed without you know, the good old Doctor. So number 2, I'm going to go with the Montreal Screwjob. You know, you could even put this basically led to Owen Hart's death, so you could put that in there. I'm not going to put Owen. I wasn't going to put Owen on the list because I wasn't following the WWE product that closely in 1999, which is kind of ironic. The year they were the most successful was the one year I really wasn't paying attention. That kind of shows you that I'm not a casual wrestling fan. But yeah, the Montreal Screwjob, to me, it was a really dark moment. You know, I'm a huge fan of Bret Hart. I've made the case in the past that I think he's the greatest superstar of all time, not just for my personal taste, but for my unbiased taste as well. I just think he pretty much had all the bases covered. But it was just kind of a dark, ruthless moment. You know, looking back on it, I just felt like you know, here's this guy that never missed a day of work. You know, really was on the road, busting his ass, and you know, doing everything he could for the company. Really stood for a lot of morals, had great beliefs, and just to see him kind of raped in the ring like that, and you know, to see Bret's reaction and see the lack of loyalty, the distrust. it just showed you how dirty that the business could be. I mean, we could discuss this for hours, and you know, if you want to see my full thoughts on it, watch the 1997 pay-per-view rewind, because I try to tell it from both sides of the story, because I'm not saying that Bret didn't have his flaws in this situation. He did, but at the same time, I felt like Vince was a little bit too ruthless here. But this was a total business decision here. I know there's some behind the scenes things about contracts and possibly Vince being sued. Maybe that's possibly why, you know, he wasn't as honest as he could have been with Bret during the Montreal Screwjob. But I'm just talking about the moment here. I just felt like the moment of Bret getting screwed in that ring, it just hurt. It hurt as a Bret Hart fan. It sucks looking back on it. And, it just really, you know, me and my brother used this expression, like if something bad happens in someone's life, like that's like the Montreal of your life. Like if someone's parents got divorced, you say, oh, the divorce was like their Montreal. So it's just kind of funny how that's kind of you know, that expression's kind of, you know, taking on a life of its own. But yeah, so I'll put the Montreal Screwjob at number 2. At number 1, it's no surprise here. It's something that I don't like talking about, but, you know, it seems like we always go back to it. I have to say, the Chris Benoit double murder suicide was, yeah, I mean, I don't see what could be worse than this. I mean, your favorite wrestler, my favorite wrestler of all time, basically just ruins and destroys his legacy. But looking back on it, you had to see it coming. You know, after watching Chris Benoit's WCW matches, after seeing the movie Concussion, after knowing about how Benoit was so affected by Eddie's death, after knowing about, you know, kind of, you know, some of the behind the scenes things that went on with, you know, Nancy Benoit and the son had autism and everything. The whole thing, it doesn't really surprise you looking back on it. If you guys want to see the most logical explanation of what happened, I would check out a video on YouTube. It's called Pro Wrestlers Shoot on Chris Benoit. The one that gave the best explanation of why this was no surprise was Rene Dupree. Talked about, you know, several drugs that was in Benoit's system. I think he mentioned Xanax. He said that there's been moments where he's taken Xanax and just blacked out and ripped like a door off his hinges and didn't even know it. So there you go. I mean, that probably has something to do with it. You know, the CTE thing is going to be a major problem for football players. And, you know, because of Benoit's style, like I said in the past, I mean, look at what Benoit put on his, the abuse he put his brain through. You know, just doing the flying headbutt. I don't know, Daniel Bryan's probably had problems with this as well. You know, the flying headbutt is not a safe thing to do. And when you combine it with Benoit doing it off of ladders, doing it when, you know, Jericho's ramming a chair right into his face unprotected, you know, the constant number of German suplexes, and then when you combine that with the steroids, the other medications, I guess he started drinking at the time. Yeah, I never knew Benoit was a drinker. He said that the Royal Rumble, when he won it, was the first time he ever had a drink. Maybe Eddie passing away, you know, had him going through depression. But yeah, just you know, the moment was awful. It sucks that we lost one of the best wrestlers of all time, and at the same time, he ended up, you know, murdering his wife, murdering his infant son. You know, maybe there was some type of religious thing behind it. I don't know. It was, you know, he let everybody down, and you know, you just. It was just something you just didn't want to believe. And it affected me too. It affected me that whole year. When I read Jericho's book, he talked about how Benoit was depressed. And then he found that, you know, Benoit always used to write these emails to him, these really long emails. And Jericho talked about how, you know, a lot of writing is a symptom of depression. And I found myself going through that as well that year, losing my grandma, losing Benoit that same year. I found myself just writing to this girl a little bit more than I should have. And I just think that was, looking back on it, I just think that was a sign of depression. You know, because, you know, you had looked up to Benoit. you know, me and my brother and friends, the way we celebrated that one year when Benoit was getting his, you know, getting all that success, winning championships, it just felt like all the hard work was finally paying off. And, you know, just for those moments to be tarnished was really, really, really dark. Something that I don't think anyone will ever get over. But hey, you know, it sucks to talk about it. You know, Austin said in the past, you know, if he were to give his wallet to somebody, and if you want to count on all that money still being in the wallet when you get it back, you give it to Chris Benoit. So I've never seen anyone say so many nice things about somebody and then they go on to commit such a heinous, such a selfish, such a fucked up act. But to me, that really wasn't Chris Benoit that did that. That was just someone that you know, suffered a lot of abuse and side effects to pro wrestling. And I think in some ways it's a blessing in disguise as to what happened. I think it opened the door up even more for smaller guys to have success in the WWE. And I think it also made them crack down on, you know, taking certain chances in the ring and steroids as well. I think it opened the door for someone like CM Punk to come in and say, hey, I'm straight edge. This is how we do it. And, so don't get me wrong. I still think there is some good, you know, whenever you have a tragedy like this, you want to learn from it and correct some of the mistakes that were made. And I think that's the best thing that the industry could do is just, you know, look at the good that came with it. You know, for as bad as it was, it didn't bring down the industry like a lot of people thought it would. You know, everything went on. Business didn't really get hurt that much. So, you know, you just want to take the good with the bad and just, you know, take what you can learn from it and just move forward. And I think that's what's happened to a degree. But yeah, so I just wanted to share you my top 10 darkest moments in WWE history. I don't mean for this to be a depressing video. One of the great things about, you know, talking about negative things is just learning from them. Anytime someone suffers something bad or something negative, you always want to learn from it and see how you could, you know, make yourself better because of it. So I just wanted to share these moments with you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and take care.